Some costumes don't come off. What you're about to listen happened to real people. They're not the same anymore. My name is Alexis, and last Halloween I wore a costume that turned me into something I can never fully come back from. I'm writing this as a warning, because I think I'm running out of time. Or I was, a makeup artist and costume designer in Los Angeles. Last year I got hired by this wealthy tech executive named David Chen to create a custom werewolf costume for his annual Halloween party. He wanted something incredible, something that would win his costume contest and impress his guests. Money was no object. I spent 6 weeks creating this costume. It was a full-body prosthetic suit made of the highest quality materials. Silicone skin, real yak hair punched in by hand, foam latex muscle structure, animatronic facial features. The mask had servos that would make the jaw move when the wearer spoke, and the eyes were custom contact lenses with slit pupils. The hands had articulated claws made of dental acrylic. It was my masterpiece. The party was on Halloween night at David's mansion in the Hollywood Hills. He'd invited maybe 200 people, actors, producers, tech moguls, influencers. I arrived early to help him put on the costume, which would take about an hour with all the adhesive and makeup required. But when I got there, David's assistant informed me that David had come down with severe food poisoning and was in the hospital. They still wanted to use the costume, though. They'd paid $50,000 for it, and they wanted me to wear it as a showcase piece. They offered me an extra $5,000 for the night. I should have said no. The costume had been fitted specifically for David's body, and he was bigger than me, 6'3" and muscular. But $5,000 is $5,000, and I figured I could make it work with some additional padding. I spent 2 hours in the bathroom applying the costume. First the padding to bulk up my frame, then the leg extensions to add height, then the bodysuit with all its intricate musculature. The arms had extended fingers that made my hands into claws. Finally the head, a massive werewolf skull with a mechanical jaw that I controlled by clenching my own jaw. When I looked in the mirror I was shocked. It was perfect. I looked like I'd stepped out of a high-budget horror film. The suit moved with me naturally, and the facial animatronics responded to my expressions. I practiced moving, snarling, crouching. It was incredible. The party was already in full swing when I emerged. The reaction was immediate and gratifying. People gasped, crowded around me, wanted pictures. I played it up, stalking through the party, occasionally letting out a howl. The suit had a voice modulator that made me sound properly monstrous. I was having the time of my life. Around midnight they dimmed the lights for the costume contest. I was standing on a raised platform in the living room when I felt the first strange sensation. A tingling in my hands like they'd fallen asleep. I flexed my fingers inside the costume's claw gloves, but the tingling intensified, spread up my arms. Then I felt the suit tighten. Not uncomfortable, just closer, like it was shrinking or I was swelling. The padding I'd used to bulk up my frame suddenly felt redundant, like I'd grown into the suit's dimensions naturally. That's when I smelled something that nearly made me collapse. Someone in the crowd was eating sliders from the catering table, and the smell of the meat hit me like a physical force. Not just smelling it, I could track it. I could smell the blood, the fat, the protein. My mouth started watering inside the mask, saliva dripping down my chin. I won the contest. As they announced my name, I tried to wave, but my hand moved wrong. The claws of the costume flexed and I heard a mechanical whir, except the suit didn't have any servos in the hands. The movement had been biological. Real. I stumbled off the platform and headed for the bathroom, my heart pounding. I needed to get the suit off. Now. But when I reached for the seam at the back of my neck where the costume should have opened, I couldn't find it. My fingers traced my spine, searching for the zipper, the Velcro, any separation between the suit and my body. There was none. The suit had become my skin. I stared in the bathroom mirror and watched my reflection snarl. Except I hadn't made that expression. The werewolf face moved on its own, lips pulling back from very real-looking fangs. The eyes, my eyes behind those custom contacts, had actually changed. The pupils were slits and they glowed faintly in the dim light. I tried to scream, but what came out was a howl. A real animal howl that rattled the bathroom mirror and made someone outside the door laugh, thinking I was really committing to the bit. Panic took over. I clawed at my face, trying to find the edge of the mask, but all I felt was my own skin. Thick, tough skin covered in coarse hair. The claws weren't gloves anymore, they were extensions of my fingers, and I could feel through them. I could feel the cold porcelain of the sink, the texture of my own face as I desperately searched for a seam that no longer existed. I ran. I pushed out of the bathroom, through the party, and out the front door. People called after me, still thinking it was part of the performance. I ran down the long driveway, my leg extensions that should have been stilts now feeling like natural parts of my body, each stride covering an impossible distance. I made it to my car but couldn't drive. My hands, paws couldn't grip the steering wheel properly. The claws kept getting in the way and I was terrified I'd lose control. More than that, I was terrified by how much I wanted to go back into that party, how much I wanted to hunt. The night air was alive with scents. I could smell everything. The fear sweat of a woman jogging alone 3 streets over. The blood scent of a stray cat in the bushes. The decay of rats in the storm drains. And underneath it all, the warm, intoxicating smell of the 200 people at the party behind me. Prey. I hid in my car until sunrise, fighting the urge to hunt, my body vibrating with an energy I'd never felt before. As the sky lightened, I felt the suit begin to loosen. The tingling sensation returned, but in reverse. My body shrank back to its normal proportions. I watched in the rearview mirror as the werewolf face slowly melted away, the features becoming less pronounced, the hair retracting into my skin. By the time the sun fully rose, I was myself again. The suit was just a suit once more, inanimate latex and foam. I could find the seams now, could peel the pieces off my body. But my skin underneath was raw, like I'd been wearing the costume for weeks instead of hours. I went home and destroyed the costume. Cut it into pieces, burned it in my fireplace. But it didn't matter. The damage was done because now every full moon I feel that tingling again. Even without the costume, I feel my bones ache and shift. My teeth feel sharper. Hair grows faster on my arms and legs that night. And the hunger. God, the hunger is still there. I have to lock myself in my apartment on full moon nights. Blast music to drown out the sounds of the city. The sounds of prey moving through the streets below. Last full moon, I woke up with blood under my fingernails. I don't own a pet. I don't know what I killed. The costume didn't transform me into a werewolf. It showed my body what being a werewolf felt like. Taught my cells how to change, and now I can't unlearn it. Each full moon, the transformation gets easier, goes a little further. I can feel myself losing the ability to come fully back. I'm writing this in early October. Halloween is coming again, and I'm terrified of what will happen when the full moon and Halloween night coincide, because that's when the veil between what I am and what I'm becoming will finally tear completely. If you're listening this after Halloween 2025, and you hear about someone in Los Angeles being attacked by an animal, know that it wasn't an animal, it was me. And I'm so sorry I couldn't stop it. Story 2. The Plague Doctor. My name is Marcus, and I need to tell you what happened before I lose myself completely. Last Halloween in New Orleans, I bought a costume that's slowly killing everyone around me, and I can't stop it. I found Mercier's costumes in an alley that shouldn't exist. I'd walked past that spot 100 times. It had always been a brick wall. But 3 days before Halloween, there was a door. Old wood, no handle, just a gap where it hung slightly open. The smell coming from inside was wrong. Sweet rot mixed with something chemical, like formaldehyde. I pushed the door open. The shop was impossibly deep, stretching back into darkness. Racks of costumes lined the walls. Victorian dresses caked in dirt, military uniforms with real bloodstains, children's clothing that looked like it had been buried. Everything smelled like a funeral home. Marcus. A voice from the shadows. How did he know my name? I've been waiting for you. The old man stepped into the dim light. His skin was gray, paper thin, stretched too tight over his skull. His eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises, just milky orbs that somehow locked onto me with perfect accuracy. When he smiled, his teeth were brown and filed to points. You want to be memorable this Halloween, he whispered. You want people to be scared. Really scared. He reached behind him without looking and pulled out something wrapped in black cloth. I have what you need. He unwrapped it slowly. A plague doctor costume, but wrong. The leather of the mask was dark and oily, and when the light hit it I could see it wasn't smooth. It had texture, pores, like it had been made from actual skin. The beak was too long, curved and sharp at the end. The eye holes weren't empty. There was something dark and wet inside them that reflected the light like living eyes. This mask is special, the old man said, running his fingers along the beak with disturbing affection. It was worn during the Black Death. By a doctor who didn't heal, he spread the plague purposefully. He believed humanity needed to be culled. When they finally caught him, they burned him alive inside this mask. But the mask survived. And it remembers. I should have run, but I reached out and touched the leather. It was warm, body temperature, and it pulsed under my fingers like a heartbeat. How much? I heard myself ask. Everything you have in your wallet. Every dollar. His smile widened. And you must follow one rule. The mask goes on last, comes off first. The mask must be last. If you break this rule, and he leaned in close. His breath smelled like decay. You'll become what it wants you to be. Forever. I pulled out my wallet. $843. I gave him all of it. He handed me the costume, and the moment I took it, the lights in the shop went out completely. When they flickered back on a second later, the old man was gone. I was alone in a brick alley holding a bundle of black cloth. There was no door. There never had been. Halloween night. I dressed in my apartment, the coat, the gloves, everything fit like it had been made for me. The mask sat on my table and I stared at it for 10 minutes before putting it on. The inside wasn't leather. It was something else. Something that felt wet and alive. The moment it touched my face, the world changed. I could see things. Not normal things. I could see sickness. Every person on the street below glowed with patches of disease. Red for infection, black for cancer, yellow for decay. The colors pulsed and writhed like living things. And the smell. God, the smell of rotten sickness filled my nose, and it smelled good. Delicious. My reflection in the window showed something wrong. My eyes behind the mask's dark glass weren't my eyes anymore. They were flat, dead, predatory. I walked to the French Quarter. Thousands of people in costumes celebrating, drinking, alive, and I could see every single sickness infecting them. Flu in their lungs, tumors in their breasts, infections in their blood. The Halloween crowd was a buffet of disease and I was starving. I followed a woman for 6 blocks. She had something dark wrapped around her throat. Cancer, my brain supplied, though I'd never studied medicine. Stage 4. Terminal. She was laughing with friends, drunk, happy, not knowing she'd be dead in 4 months. I needed to get closer. I needed to touch the sickness, to feed it, to spread it. That's when I felt the vial in my pocket. I pulled it out. A small glass tube filled with black liquid that seemed to move on its own. In my altered vision, I could see millions of organisms swimming in it. Plague. Real bubonic plague. Dormant for centuries. Waiting. The mask whispered to me in a language I shouldn't understand but did. It told me to uncork the vial, to pour it in a drink, to let it vaporize into the air, to release it into this crowd of thousands and watch the pestilence bloom. My hand moved toward the cork. I wanted to do it. Every cell in my body screamed to release the plague, to watch it spread, to be a true plague doctor, not a healer but a carrier. An angel of death, I forced myself to run. Shoved through the crowd, the vial clutched in my shaking hand. People cursed at me as I knocked them aside. I could hear laughter coming from inside the mask, a wet bubbling sound like lungs filling with fluid. I tried to rip the mask off, but my hands wouldn't obey. They kept reaching for the vial instead, trying to uncork it. I was fighting myself in the middle of Bourbon Street, screaming inside a mask that wouldn't let me scream. Then I remembered. Mask comes off first. I grabbed the beak and pulled. The pain was instant and absolute. It felt like I was tearing off my actual face. The mask had grown roots into my skin. Thin tendrils of leather that had burrowed into my flesh. I could feel them ripping out of my cheeks, my forehead, my jaw. There was a wet tearing sound. Blood poured down my face. The mask came away with strips of my skin still attached to the inside, and I collapsed on the filthy street. Screaming. The vial fell from my pocket and shattered. I watched in horror as the black liquid spread across the pavement, began to evaporate into a dark mist. This was it. I'd failed. The plague was loose, but the mist just disappeared. Evaporated into nothing, like it had never existed. People walked right through where it had been, completely unaffected. Maybe it had all been in my head. Maybe the mask had made me see things that weren't real. I threw the mask in a dumpster and went home. Burned everything in my bathtub, the coat, the gloves, the shirt. Watched until every thread was ash. That should have been the end. It wasn't. 2 days later, my neighbor collapsed in the hallway. Flu-like symptoms, the doctor said. By the end of the week, 12 people in my apartment building were sick. By the end of the month, it had spread to 300 people in the French Quarter. The news called it a mystery illness. Flu-like, but worse. More aggressive. People died. Not many, but enough. The elderly, the immunocompromised, the sick. Exactly the people I'd seen glowing with disease that Halloween night. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. Flu season. Bad luck. But then I started coughing, except I wasn't sick. When I coughed, what came out wasn't phlegm. It was something black and oily that moved on its own, that had tiny tendrils reaching out like it was searching for a new host. I caught it in tissues and burned them immediately, but every day there was more. My skin started changing. Small patches turning gray and rough like old leather. My sense of smell became sharper. I could smell sickness again, though not as strongly as when I wore the mask. And my reflection, sometimes when I'm not paying attention, I catch a glimpse of the mask's silhouette over my face, like a ghost image burned into my retinas, or my soul. I went back to find the shop. The building was residential, had been for decades according to the neighbors. No costume shop. Never was. I checked my bank statement, no charge. But the receipt is in my wallet, yellowing and old, dated 1887. Last week I saw the old man from the shop. He was standing across the street watching me. His white eyes gleamed in the streetlight. He smiled, tipped an invisible hat, and walked away. When I blinked, he was gone. Yesterday I coughed up something worse than usual. Not just the black oil, but something solid. I pulled it out of my mouth. a small curved piece of leather shaped like a bird's beak. I'm growing the mask inside me. It's coming back from the inside out. My face has started to hurt. The bones ache, especially around my nose and jaw, like they're trying to reshape themselves. Elongate. Form a beak. I can't stop coughing now. Every time I taste leather and rot, every time black oil splatters onto my hands and I watch it evaporate into a mist that people breathe in without knowing, I'm spreading it. I'm the plague doctor, even without the costume. The worst part? I'm starting to like it. When I hear someone nearby cough, when I smell infection, I feel satisfaction, pride, like I'm fulfilling a purpose. 3 days ago, I received a package. Inside was a new plague doctor mask identical to the one I burned, and a note in spidery handwriting. You can't burn what lives inside you. The mask was just an invitation. You accepted. Now you are the plague doctor. Continue the work. I tried to throw the new mask away. It appeared on my pillow the next morning. This morning I put it on. I couldn't help myself. It felt like coming home. And when I looked in the mirror, my face underneath had already started to match it. My nose had lengthened. My eyes had gone dark. The mask wasn't transforming me anymore. It was just showing me what I'd already become. Tonight is Halloween again. 1 year since I bought the costume. I can feel people gathering in the French Quarter. Thousands of them breathing the same air, touching the same surfaces, spreading their germs and sicknesses to each other. And I'll be there. In my mask, in my skin, same thing now. If you see a plague doctor walking through the crowds this Halloween in New Orleans, don't get too close. Don't breathe too deeply. Because it's not a costume anymore, it's me. And I'm so very hungry. Story 3. The Doll Costume. This is Sarah, and I need to tell someone what happened to me last Halloween before I lose the ability to tell anyone anything ever again. I'm 23 years old, and I'm becoming less human every day. For Halloween 2024, my friends and I decided to do a group costume based on horror movie characters. I chose to go as a creepy porcelain doll, like Annabelle or those vintage dolls you find in your grandmother's attic that seem to watch you with their glass eyes. I commissioned a costume from this Etsy seller who specialized in horror couture. She had amazing reviews and her photos were incredible. I ordered a full costume, a white dress with lace trim, white stockings, Mary Jane shoes, a black wig with ringlet curls, and most importantly, a porcelain-style mask that looked like a doll's face. Dead glossy eyes, rosy cheeks, and a small perfect smile painted in red. The package arrived 2 weeks before Halloween. When I opened it, I was stunned. The costume was even better than the photos. The mask especially was a work of art. Lightweight, comfortable. With eye holes so well designed I could see perfectly through what looked like solid glass eyes. I tried on the complete costume to make sure everything fit. When I looked in the mirror, I got chills. I looked exactly like a life-sized antique doll. The mask gave my face this eerie, expressionless quality. The glass eyes seemed to follow me as I turned my head. I took everything off except I struggled with the mask. It should have just lifted off, but it seemed stuck to my face. Not painfully, just adhesive like it didn't want to let go. I had to pull quite hard to remove it, and when I did, my face felt strangely stiff underneath, like I'd been wearing it for hours instead of minutes. Halloween night. I got ready at my apartment before heading to my friend Lauren's party. I put the costume on piece by piece, saving the mask for last. The moment I pulled it over my face and positioned it properly, I felt that same adhesive sensation, like the mask was bonding with my skin. At the party, my costume was a huge hit. People kept commenting on how realistic the mask looked, how I moved like a real doll, stiff and unsettling. They didn't realize I wasn't trying to move that way. My joints had actually become stiff. Each movement felt mechanical. like my elbows and knees were ball joints instead of normal human articulation. Around 11 p.m. I went to the bathroom. When I tried to remove the mask to reapply my lipstick, I couldn't get it off. I pulled and tugged, but the mask wouldn't budge. It had fused completely with my face. I could see my own skin visible at the edges, but where the mask met my face, there was no seam anymore. It had become my face. Panicking, I grabbed a butter knife from Lauren's kitchen and tried to pry the edge of the mask up. The knife slipped and gashed my cheek, but instead of blood, what oozed out was something white and thick like liquid porcelain. The cut sealed itself almost immediately, the porcelain flowing back together like water. I couldn't breathe. I ran out of the party without explanation and drove home. My movements were getting stiffer with each passing minute. My fingers didn't bend naturally anymore. They clicked into specific positions like a doll's hands being posed. At home, I tried everything. I tried to crack the mask with a hammer. The hammer bounced off with a noise like striking ceramic, but the mask didn't break. I felt the impact, though. Felt the hammer strike my actual face. The mask was my face now. I called the Etsy seller, but the shop had been deactivated. The account didn't exist anymore. I tried to find her through other channels, but there was no trace of her anywhere. Over the next few days, the transformation accelerated. My skin everywhere turned smooth and white like bisque porcelain. My hair became synthetic, individual strands fusing into the thick, glossy material of a doll's wig. My joints, shoulders, hips, knees, elbows began to feel segmented like they could be popped apart. The worst part was my face. The mask's expression had frozen in place, but I could still feel my real face underneath trying to move. When I tried to frown, to scream, to show any emotion, I felt my actual muscles pulling. But the porcelain surface remained fixed in that small, pleasant smile. My glass eyes couldn't close. I can't blink anymore. I can't cry even though I desperately want to. I stopped going to work. I told my family and friends I was sick. How could I explain what I'd become? I spent days staring at myself in the mirror, watching the transformation complete itself. My skin developed the subtle crack lines you see in antique dolls, a fine network of lines called crazing. My lips became painted on, no longer my actual lips, but a layer of glossy red over porcelain. The seller, whoever or whatever she was, had sent me one other thing I'd overlooked. At the bottom of the costume box was a small tag, the kind you'd find on a vintage doll. It read, "Property of the doll maker, part of the living collection. Handle with care. I am no longer human. I am a doll that thinks she used to be human." I'm not sure how much longer I can even maintain that thought. My memories are becoming simplified, streamlined. Complex emotions are fading into simple binary states, happy or neutral. I can no longer feel sadness or anger or fear, only their distant echoes like remembering a dream. My body no longer needs food or water. I tried to eat once, but I have no working throat anymore, just a solid porcelain form. I don't sleep. Dolls don't sleep. I sit in my apartment, posed in whatever position I last left myself in, and wait for morning. Sometimes I stand in front of the mirror for hours, days, unable to look away from what I've become. Yesterday I found a shipping box addressed to me sitting outside my apartment door. Inside was a note. "Your transition period is complete. The collector will arrive to add you to the display on November 1st. Thank you for becoming part of our eternal collection. It's October 29th now. I have 3 days. I'm writing this on my laptop, but my fingers are so stiff I keep hitting multiple keys. My joints click with each movement. I can see the ball and socket construction of my shoulders when I move my arms. Can see the elastic cords that hold me together stretching and contracting. I tried to leave my apartment, but I couldn't make myself go far. Dolls don't go outside on their own. Dolls sit on shelves and wait for someone to move them. The compulsion to return to my apartment, to sit perfectly still and wait, is overwhelming. I don't know what the collector is or what being added to the display means. But I think I'm going to find out soon, and I think there are others like me. Others who ordered costumes from that Etsy shop. Others who are now frozen in whatever costume they chose. A collection of living dolls trapped in porcelain prisons, aware but unable to scream. If you're listening this, and you see a costume being sold online that looks too perfect, too real, don't buy it. Don't put it on. Because some costumes don't just change how you look, they change what you are. My fingers are almost too stiff to type now. The clicking of the keys sounds like ceramic tapping against plastic. I can see through the window that someone is walking up to my building. Someone tall wearing a suit carrying a large wooden crate. The collector has arrived early. I can't move to lock my door. I can only sit here smiling my painted smile and wait to be packed away. Story 4. The Perfect Costume. My name is Rachel, and I'm writing this from a place that shouldn't exist. A place where Halloween never ends and all the costumes are real. I don't have much time before I forget how to use words, so I need to make this fast. Last Halloween I wanted the perfect costume. Not good, perfect. I'm a perfectionist by nature, which is probably why I ended up here. I spent months researching, planning, designing. I wanted something original. Something that would make people stop and stare. Something that would win every contest I entered. I decided on a concept. The girl who died on Halloween. I would look like a corpse. But a beautiful one, like something from a Tim Burton film. Pale blue skin. Dark veins visible beneath the surface. White contacts. A vintage Halloween costume from the 1950s covered in dirt and fake blood. Leaves and twigs tangled in my hair. I would be the ghost of a child who died trick-or-treating decades ago. I spent hundreds of dollars on professional makeup, special effects supplies, the perfect vintage costume from an estate sale. I practiced the makeup for weeks, refining every detail. The vintage costume was a witch outfit from 1952. A black dress with orange trim, a pointed hat, a small plastic pumpkin bucket. Halloween night. I locked myself in my bathroom for 4 hours to apply the makeup. Liquid latex to create the texture of dead skin. Paint to make the veins visible. Contacts that made my eyes look cloudy and lifeless. Dark makeup around my eyes and mouth to create the illusion of decay. When I finished, I looked at myself in the mirror and felt a surge of pride. I looked dead. Actually dead. I put on the vintage witch costume. Artificially aged my skin with more makeup. Tangled leaves into my wig. And stepped back to admire the final result. Perfect. I looked like I had crawled out of a grave. That's when I noticed something strange. My reflection in the mirror looked slightly different from how I felt. In the mirror, my chest wasn't moving. I wasn't breathing. I watched for a full minute and my reflection remained perfectly still. Not even the slight rise and fall of respiration. I took a breath deliberately, and my real body felt it. But my reflection stayed motionless. I raised my hand and my reflection raised its hand. I turned my head and my reflection turned its head. But the reflection's chest never moved. It just stood there dead still, exactly like a corpse would. I left for the party unsettled but excited. Everyone's reaction was even better than I'd hoped. People were genuinely disturbed by my costume. Several people asked if I was okay if I needed to sit down. I looked that realistic. At the party, I won the costume contest easily. But as the night went on, I started feeling strange. Cold but not uncomfortable. Numb but not paralyzed. Distant, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Around 1 a.m. I realized I hadn't taken a breath in over an hour. Not that I couldn't breathe. I physically wasn't breathing, and I didn't need to. My heart wasn't beating either. I put my hand to my chest and felt nothing. No pulse. No movement, nothing. I ran to the bathroom and locked myself in. I stared at my reflection, and for the first time my reflection matched reality. It wasn't moving because I wasn't moving. I wasn't breathing because I was dead, no, not dead. I was aware, thinking, moving. But I was no longer alive in any biological sense. The costume had made me into what I was pretending to be, a corpse that could walk and think. The girl who died on Halloween. I tried to wipe off the makeup, but it wasn't makeup anymore. It was my skin. The blue-gray pallor wasn't paint, it was the color of dead tissue. The veins weren't drawn on. They were visible because no blood was flowing through them anymore. The contacts weren't in my eyes had actually changed. The pupils dilated and fixed. The irises clouded. I left the party and went home hoping it would wear off, that it was some kind of hallucination or panic attack. But days passed and nothing changed. I didn't need to eat, sleep, or breathe. I didn't age. I didn't heal when I cut myself, I tried. But I didn't bleed either. Just a dry wound that stayed open, showing the gray dead tissue beneath. I couldn't go to work. Couldn't see my family. I looked like a corpse, and no amount of makeup could hide that. I was a corpse. The costume had made it real. After a week, I started noticing something else. Every night at midnight, I would feel a pull. A compulsion to go somewhere. I fought it for several nights, but eventually I gave in. I followed the pull to an old cemetery on the edge of town. That's where I found the others. There were maybe 30 people in the cemetery that first night. All in costumes. A vampire with real fangs and pale skin. A zombie with actual rotting flesh. A ghost that was translucent, barely visible. A werewolf that was too real, too animal. A demon with horns that grew from its skull and eyes that glowed red. They were all like me. People who had worn costumes that became real. People who had wanted the perfect Halloween costume and got exactly that. We stood in the cemetery, looking at each other, and I saw the same horror and confusion in their eyes that I felt. An old woman stepped forward. She was dressed as a witch, but everything about her was genuine. Her skin was green. Her fingers were gnarled claws, her eyes were yellow with slit pupils. She spoke with a voice like rustling leaves. Welcome to the Forever Halloween. You wanted perfect costumes. You got them. Now you are them. This is where we gather. Those of us who went too far. Those of us who wanted to become someone else so badly that we actually did. She explained that we were trapped in a space between life and death, between human and monster. Every night at midnight we're pulled to this cemetery. During the day we hide, pretending to be alive, but we're not fooling anyone who looks closely. We're Halloween decorations that gained sentience. We're masks that merged with faces. We're the dead who don't know how to stop moving. Some of you will fade, the witch said. You'll lose your humanity bit by bit. Forget who you were, become entirely what your costume made you. Others will hold on to their human thoughts but be trapped in these forms forever. Either way, you're ours now. You belong to Halloween. I've been attending the midnight gatherings for almost a year now. I've watched as some of the others have faded away, becoming full monsters, losing language and memory and self. The zombie no longer speaks. The werewolf runs on 4 legs now and doesn't respond to its human name. The ghost has become so translucent you can barely see it. And I don't think it remembers being human at all. I'm still holding on. I still remember my name, my life, my family. But it's getting harder. I think in terms of the living now, not people. I feel hunger, but not for food. For something else, something I don't want to name. I find myself standing in mirrors for hours, not out of vanity, but because I'm forgetting what motion looks like. Dead things are still. This Halloween will be my second one like this. The witch says the second Halloween is crucial. It's when you either reclaim your humanity or lose it forever, and I can feel it happening already. My thoughts are slowing down, becoming simpler. My memories are fading, being replaced by the invented history of the girl who died on Halloween. Soon I won't remember being Rachel. I'll only remember being her. So this is my warning. Be careful what costume you choose. Be careful what you want to become. Because if you want it badly enough, if you make your costume perfect enough, you might actually transform into it. And there's a cemetery full of monsters who used to be people, who all wanted the perfect costume and got exactly what they wished for. I can feel midnight approaching. I have to go soon. The pull is getting stronger, and it's harder to resist each time. One night I'll go to the cemetery and I won't come back. I'll stay there with the others in the forever Halloween, in the place where costumes never come off. If you see me this Halloween, the girl in the vintage witch costume with the blue-gray skin and the dead eyes, don't approach me. Don't talk to me, because I might not remember how to answer. I might not remember that I was ever human at all. The curse of the perfect costume is that it's too perfect. It doesn't just cover you, it replaces you, and once that happens, there's no going back to who you were. It's 11:58 p.m. I have to go now. The cemetery is calling, and this time I don't think I'm coming back.